This conversation is brought to you with the kind compliments of CALL, that is, the Commonwealth of Learning. Gender inequality must be eradicated, and CALL is on a mission to help in its obliteration. It has embarked on a project to help young women and girls become motivated to pursue their fields of interest and build the future generation of leaders by launching the Commonwealth Wise Woman Project. This is a mentoring program that links girls from across the Commonwealth with mentors also from across the Commonwealth who are women in leadership roles with a story deserving of emulation. But CALL does not stop there. CALL is now taking that initiative further by creating this podcast series where I get the opportunity and privilege to interview some of these distinguished women and hear the path they took or the path that took them to leadership. COVID-19 has joined the long list of contributors to gender inequality, including globalization, technology, and climate change. But stay with us through this 10-episode series and hear how women have made their way over and around these hurdles. I am Dr. Ann A. Wallace, a higher education management and e-learning specialist, and I will be your host. Well, hello, good morning. This episode is entitled Lead from Where You Are, and it is by Dr. Luz Longsworth. Welcome, Dr. Longsworth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wallace. It is a pleasure to be here with you and the viewers.
Great, thank you. Well, you know what I'd like to do, Liz, is before we even get started with our discussion, I would like to introduce our listeners to you using your bio. Dr. Luz Longsworth holds a doctorate in business administration in higher education management from the University of Bath in the United Kingdom, a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish and French with first-class honors, a Master of Business Administration and Marketing, and the latter two degrees are from the University of the West Indies at Mona. And she holds a Master of Arts degree in Hispanic Studies from Queen's University, Ontario, Canada. Her research and her practice focus on virtual leadership in higher education, leadership development, women in leadership, and organizational transformation and change. Her most recent post was Pro Vice Chancellor, Global Affairs, and Principal of the University of the West Indies Open Campus, which is the online and flexible learning campus of the University of the West Indies. In addition to a career in university teaching and leadership, Dr. Longsworth has held senior leadership roles in the private sector in the areas of manufacturing and financial services in Jamaica, the British Virgin Islands, and Belize. Over the past 20 years, she has also participated in consultancies across the region and in the UK, working with international and regional organizations and companies such as Ernst & Young, Caribbean, Unicommer Courts, Belize, the Leadership Foundation of the UK, and Sandals Resorts International, among others. She currently runs her own independent consulting practice based in Jamaica, keenly community-oriented. Dr. Longsworth has worked with at-risk youth in Western Jamaica, Belize, Barbados, and the British Virgin Islands, as well as served on the boards of several community-based organizations. As an honorary fellow of the Vancouver-based Commonwealth of Learning since 2016 and a member of their Commonwealth Wise Women Initiative, she's also involved in mentoring young women across the Commonwealth. Dr. Longsworth is fluent in Spanish with a good knowledge of French and German. And I assure you, she's also fluent in English. as you'll soon find out. What a remarkable lady. Welcome, Dr. Longsworth, and thank you for taking the time to be here with us. Dr. Longsworth, you have worn many hats for many years. The last of which we have just heard is that of Pro-Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Open Campus of the University of the West Indies. The University of the West Indies, according to the Times Higher Education rankings for 2021, is ranked at the 2.5 percentile as the best universities in the globe. I believe that to be a principal in such an institution is no mean feat. Please tell us, Luz, what hat or hats you're wearing now?
Well, as you mentioned, my most recent post, which ended at the end of July of this year, was with the University of the West Indies after a total of 30 years of service. Interjecting other things that I did in my life. So in this new reimagining, I do not call it retirement, reimagining of my career, I have continued to work in the field of education as an independent consultant. And I'm very excited about a new project which will bring to the Caribbean a school for hospitality and tourism in conjunction with the UWI, the University of the West Indies, and the Florida International University, and the Sandals Resorts International, three magnificent organizations to bring an innovative and very forward-thinking school for training and education in one of our largest industries in the region. So I'm very taken up with that project at the moment, very excited, as I always am when it has anything to do with education for national and regional development.
Wow, well, that's one hat as you put it, but it sounds more like three hats in one. But there's nothing surprising for you because you wear a lot of hats. But let's start at the beginning. At what stage or what age did you realize you would be an international leader?
Oh, international leader. Well, I think I could probably trace my leadership skills to 5 years old. And I was so encouraged by my grandparents and my mother to always speak out. And there is a family legend of my grandfather putting me on a table with all his older friends, listening to me wax poetic about anything that they wanted to ask.
Oh my goodness.
So my family says they saw the leadership potential then. I would say that the first time I ever thought of myself as a leader in any way was really in primary school in drama club. And I got the lead part of Cinderella. And, that was a leadership position. And when I look back at it, it was the first time I was literally on stage. But in terms of a sort of international global leader, I think that all evolved over my career as I moved from place to place. And I think I learned from my mother in particular that wherever you are, you must bloom, you must blossom, you must serve as if, even if you are sweeping the floor, that you are the leader of sweeping the floor. So every step of the way, I have embraced what I do, and I've done it to the best of my ability, and also never been afraid to step up and make recommendations and say how things could be done better. So I guess that.
Yes, we can see that you had some real leadership beginnings. Very good, and it is very obvious in all that you do. And as you say, you lead wherever you are. So that's wonderful. But let's go back a little bit. You talked about reimagining. Let's go back to the original imaginings. Were there any situations growing up in Jamaica that could have diverted the trajectory of your path, your career? And if so, why didn't they? I can tell you a million I encountered, but let's hear from you.
Right. Well, it was all about career changes. I started university intending to do all the languages, and it was my dream to become an interpreter in the United Nations. But I fell in love with academia and decided to go deeper into that and to have as my dream being a part of the University of the West Indies. And I started teaching and moving in the direction of becoming a professor of modern languages and literature. And then what happened? A major change that, the economy changed, the Department of Languages and Literature started to downsize, and I was literally laid off. And I was in the middle of doing a PhD, and I also had just gotten married, and I had no job. Oh. So, I can really empathize with those persons, and it shook my life, because my trajectory of being a professor and so was then truncated. But, as we say in Jamaica, one has to wheel and come again. Mm-hmm. And I recognized that I wanted to retain my relationship with university. And there was a vacancy in administration. And the switch from academia into administration, wasn't normal in those days. But I moved into administration and continued to contribute and actually to enjoy the university's management structure. I started as an assistant registrar and came up with a lot of new ideas and thoughts of how to improve the work that they had given me to do.
Clearly, you have got a grasp on this leadership approach to just about everything that you do. But I would like to know if there was anything in your family circle, growing up as you did in your family circle, did that mold you into this kind of person? Or are you a deviation from the family background? Are you a little bit of a rogue or a rebel kind of thing? Or were you just mommy's little angel?
All of the above. I come from a family of enterprising people and dedicated persons. So my grandfather in particular had a lot of impact on my work ethic in the sense that he was someone who insisted on, punctuality, things that are not normal in our region, punctuality, taking home work, making sure that even if you are a lowly employee, you work as if you own the place. Mm-hmm. And that was passed on to my mother, who then went on to live an entrepreneurial life. And she actually influenced my leadership skills tremendously, because at the height of her career, and I'd watched her from I was 10 run her own business, she was running a business of over 500 employees, and running it with an iron hand, but with a soft heart. And also knowing how you can motivate people, how you lead people, how you build a business, and you build the people that are in the business. So I learned a lot from my family, and I particularly point out my mother's leadership style has influenced mine quite a bit.
Well, that's very good to know, and I think it is important for our young listeners to understand that a lot of learning happens from the home environment. But in that regard, you've worked with at-risk youths across the Caribbean. Knowing what you know from how you have been brought up, and knowing how it's important for young girls to understand where to make their moves in life, would you say that girls are more at risk than boys?
Yes, in many ways, girls are more at risk. Although the statistics may show that in our region, in the Caribbean, women dominate in terms of tertiary education, what I think you find is that women who are at risk, young girls who do not have that pathway into tertiary education, are more at risk in terms of exploitation, in terms of domestic violence, emotional abuse, even trafficking, human trafficking. And it is because their pathway is a lot less clear unless they have gone through the educational system. And so for our young women, it is very important for me that they can see that they have talents, that they can move forward. And they do need a lot of mentoring, they need a lot of support, and one has to be careful that they do not slip between the cracks, because it is easy for them to stay home, to have early pregnancies, and then their trajectories are truncated too early. So I think that the young women that I have encountered have all been in search of guidance and also of confidence that no matter where they come from, they can move forward, that they have talents that can be developed, and that they can make a life. Most of them want to make a life for their families, contribute to their mothers, their fathers, their brothers and sisters, or if they have children, their children, you know. And I have my own.
That's an interesting thing, because from the way you have spoken, when we listen to all that you have done so far in your career path, I just wonder how you find the time to handle that life. You know, I'm aware that first of all, work-life balance is elusive for leaders, and you particularly, you manage to do all of this. You do Tai Chi,
Yes.
you meditate, you do yoga. Tell us why it's important to have that work-life integration or work-life balance.
I like integration better than balance. And from very early, I realized that concept of balance was being wrongly portrayed to us, particularly as women. In a way, telling women that they have to have work-life balance puts extra stress on them, because then they feel, oh, I have to work 24 hours and I have to be a mother or a sister or a daughter for 24 hours. That's how we women translate work-life balance, you know, and it burns us out. So I like the idea of integration. And what I say to young women and to the people I teach in this area is that consider your work and your life so-called balance similar to how you ride a bicycle. That the truth is that when you're riding a bicycle and you look to the naked eye as if you are in perfect balance, the truth is that you are constantly shifting from one side to the next in order to maintain what looks like balance. So don't beat yourself up, for instance, if for several months or even a couple of years, you are focusing on one element of your life. You know, whether it is having children or having doing your education. I can remember my daughter was 6 months old and I decided to do my MBA. And it was a sacrifice because I didn't see her as much as I wanted in her first year and a half. But it was a sacrifice that I had to make at that time. The opportunity was there. So that those 18 months were very unbalanced, but you know, you then swing it back, you know, so in her other years. And so women have to know.
You stay on the bike. You stay on the bike.
Yes, and you have to realize that it's a constant adjustment. So integration is better, and you get better at it as you get older, thankfully. And you find then that you must always prioritize. If you have a sick child, you know, for me, that was it. You know, if my children were ill, it didn't matter what was happening at the workplace. I was with my children. So you have your priorities and you know that you have drawn the line in the sand. If it means you're going to be fired, well, I'm sorry.
So
that
then
was
by integrating, you create that balance that we hear about. We will be right back after a short break. The Path to Leadership is brought to you by the Commonwealth Wise Women Project. Dr. Longsworth, before we went to break, you were telling us how you've so almost magically carved out the integration of work and life. But you know, I was interviewing a female leader some years ago, and she lamented the fact that very often young women in higher education seek careers that will allow them to have a 9-to-5 job. She cited specifically medicine, where she said girls look to be pediatricians or things that will allow them to just work 9-to-5. But are you saying that a young woman can have a vibrant, effective career and have a family life as well?
Yes, of course, under certain conditions. So I can only use myself as an example. When I was doing my MBA, I had tremendous family support. From babysitters to mother to grandparents and so on, who supported my dream. So you need that village, you need that support system. And that's something I would recommend for young women. Lean on your support system. Too often we women want to do it all on our own. And that is what really burns us out. So don't be afraid to ask for support, for help. Look for those, other women that want to lift you up and support you during that time. Yes.
I'm very glad you said that. I'm really very glad you said that, because, you have been and you continue to be a leader in what is predominantly a man's world. And sometimes it is said that to be a good leader, a woman must act like a man. Do you agree?
Not at all. That is something I'm very passionate about. I do not believe that women should adopt a particular style because they think that that's what makes them a good leader. The most important thing about leadership, and I would say particularly for women, but for all leaders, is being authentic, being who you really are and trying to be the best leader you can be. Too often we're told, especially when you step into a role that someone else has held with distinction, some other man, you have big shoes to fill. The truth is you have to walk in your own shoes. Yeah. You cannot ever imitate anyone else and be successful at it. I'm sorry. You have to be yourself. So there's this thing about male leadership style and female leadership style. The interesting thing is, of course, in the 21st century, we're seeing what is called female leadership style becoming much more effective than what was perceived as the male sort of leader-centric, authoritarian leadership style. So maybe the question should really be, should men now start to adopt female?
Well, yeah, we might have to change this altogether. But, we still live with that division in all that we do. And sometimes it is said that men dominate women through the advocacy of women. And I wonder what you would say to a young woman, a young girl getting ready to enter the world of work to guard against falling victim of that kind of situation.
Right. I think that is very true, that we do have some women who are not aware, maybe perhaps not interested, or perhaps themselves having been so abused in their own trajectory up the ladder, that they are not as supportive, that they will almost be more difficult for young women trying to move up the ladder than even a man. So I would say to young women that, just look for the right kind of mentor within the environment. It is very difficult when you have a toxic female leader. It is, as a woman, you feel betrayed.
Yeah.
And I have been there, so I understand, where you think, oh, but this is another woman, she should be supporting me. Why is she being, the most difficult obstacle in my day-to-day work? That is just the reality. And I guess with age, I have looked at it with empathy and compassion, to say that some women will do that to toughen up the young woman, because they feel that's the way, that's their perception of how to move forward.
Well, I want to let my listeners know that, I want to set the record straight here. When you talk about with age, I have to ask, what age are you talking about? Because when I look at you, I don't see any age to write home about.
So maybe I should say with stage rather than age, right?
Absolutely, yes. Rather than the age.
as you progress in your career. But the truth is that, yes, not all women will be your support system. And sometimes it is a man who becomes your primary support. The key thing is to look for the kind of mentorship, the kind of support and advice that will guide you properly. And be aware that there are women who have been socialized to view you, especially if you're young and brilliant and upcoming, as competition. And that is just their socialization. You have to kind of take it on the back and brush it off as much as you can. But
what you said there has brought to mind two other questions. There is the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 that talks about achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. That it also includes a women's full and effective participation in leadership and things like that. And I wonder what you would say, given what you've just said, what you would say to a young woman in order to ready herself to take advantage of that development goal. Because I found that speaking with women, a lot of women embrace that SDG number 5. What would you say to a young girl to make herself receptive to that?
First of all, you make sure that you continue your education. Now it is so relatively easy, even with free courses, to continue to strengthen your skill sets. That's the first thing. The second thing, look at leadership not as something that you will acquire magically, but rather intentionally as something you can also learn some tools to help you to move through the difficult waters that exist in achieving gender equity. So I think that you have to really prepare yourself, be intentional and deliberate, recognize that you want to be a leader, strengthen your skill set, but strengthen your leadership IQ, your leadership Q, your LQ, so to speak.
LQ, yes. And on that matter of LQ, I found that sometimes young people, particularly girls, find themselves in situations and they do not recognize that they are actually in leadership camp. They think, oh, my mother is too harsh, or my father is too harsh, or my supervisor is just picking on me, my boss does not like me. And I just wonder how you would help them to come to an understanding that they are in leadership camp, the foundation for leadership is being set, and how they can see past the trees to the wood.
Right. It is all a learning process. And one of the things that I have found helpful in one of the areas that I participated in the John Maxwell training is to look at yourself, and this is the title, as a leader from wherever you are. And recognizing that people will say, but you can't lead your boss, you can't lead your co-workers, people who are on your level. But that is not true. But there is a a system of doing that, a system of being able to understand and to firstly look at everyone who works with you or above you as people, essentially. And the only way you can lead people is to understand people. And my personal thing, the only way you can really lead people well is to truly love people with all their warts, right?
You are
And
such an authentic leader, Liz. I've heard you say in another environment, it was actually another interview that you had, and I listened, and you said that you like to leave people better than where you found them. And that is such an authentic thing to say, and it's such a leadership and a female leadership thing to say. And I just wonder if you see yourself as responsible, or maybe responsible is not the word, but do you take it upon yourself to help young girls and women to move up the ladder to leadership, or is it something you think that they should work their way up and evolve on their own?
no, I honestly firmly believe that young women they need not just role models, but they need people who will mentor them, people who will take an interest, and people who will reveal the leadership qualities. Let me tell a quick story that really surprised me, but when I reflected, it was good. As I told you, one of the first leadership roles I played was going on stage and being the lead in my school play. This is at the end of primary school, so you're talking about 10 years old. And my drama teacher and my dance teacher cast me as the lead, and I was in shock. But it was very successful and good reviews and so on. Cycle forward 30 years later, I meet up my dance teacher, who was the producer of the play, at church. And I went to her and I said, I just wanted to thank you, because I think that was such a wonderful experience for me. And I don't know what you saw, why you made me, because I was a very reticent child in primary school. There had been a lot going on in my family, and I was not, I didn't perceive myself then as a leader. And she said, Luz, what we as the teachers saw in you was somebody who deserved to be on stage, somebody who could lead this play. And we saw your leadership skills from then. This is 30 years later. And I thought, wow, because that play gave me the confidence as I was moving into high school to know that I could present myself in a way that was a leadership role. So young women in particular need people, and particularly those who are a little reticent, to recognize and encourage and to put them on stage, to give them that opportunity to shine. And I think that that's our role as women leaders for other women and girls.
For other women. I hope that other women leaders will listen to this and realize that we have a significant role to play in the lives of our up and coming leaders. But the research has shown that over the years, women have advanced. They are way better than they were, and they've got senior positions, but they don't have the top leadership positions, the kinds of position that, like what you have had. They, in fact, sometimes just accept that they've gone up a bit and they stay there and they're quite happy. What would you say to a young woman about settling for a middle position?
Well, first, I'd say never settle. If you want to remain at that position because that's totally fulfilling and that's your dream, then there's nothing wrong with that. You're not settling. You've reached your apex. You've reached where you want to be. But in terms of that ambition to move up, never give up, and remember that things are changing quickly now in our world. We still have that glass ceiling in many of the professions, but I anticipate that it's going to be shattered by a lot of these young women that are moving up now, because they are ready, they are prepared, and they have performed. So I'm pretty sure that they will move up the ladder. But one of the things that I am always pretty sure about is that this cannot be done by women alone. men also have to come on board and recognize the contribution that women make, and therefore create the path. When they have the dominance in an organization, they have to ensure that they work to create a pathway for women, because they're really losing out. The organization is losing out. The research shows that organizations with female board members, female leaders, outperform from the bottom line perspective, those that are not. So, I mean, even if you're just looking at it from a figures and a bottom line perspective, the ideas, the skill set, the commitment that women bring to their roles in senior positions brings benefits for the entire organization. So it is for our men as well to join hands with the women to say, okay, we have to create an intentional path for women to take up leadership roles.
You speak of equality. Clearly, you are focused on equality. You know, you have such an impressive leadership path. Now that you are so accomplished, what would you say to your 15-year-old self?
I would say, just keep on believing in yourself. Believe in yourself. If there was any issue I may have had, would have been moments when I didn't believe in myself. And I would have said to her, don't worry about it. You have everything. At 15, you have everything you need to be successful in the future. So just believe in your dreams, believe in your ability to make that a reality.
Believe in your dreams and believe in your reality. Believe in yourself. I hope our young girls are hearing you. What would you say as a parting message to young girls and women and maybe young men listening to this conversation?
I'd say the world is exciting for you right now. The world is yours. You know, people always say, oh, the youth are our future. The future is yours. Its future is here. And there are so many new pathways. The traditional ways of leading, of moving up an organization over 20, 30 years, that's no longer the paradigm. And so you have so much opportunity, again, just by believing in your skill set, believing in your dream. And there are so many new technologies that can allow you to move, to leapfrog the usual trajectory that we have been used to over, you know, the past century of moving into leadership positions, social media leadership, influencers. But whatever you do, do it for your highest good and the highest good of the communities that you serve.
Excellent. Listeners, I hope you heard Dr. Longsworth. The future is here. Look at the community, look at your own highest good, and the world is yours. It's an oyster for you to play with. Dr. Longsworth, thank you very much.
Thank you. It has been a real pleasure to have this conversation with you, Anne. And I wish all of our young women and young men who may be watching this great success.
We have been listening to Dr. Luz Longsworth, a leader in the Commonwealth. She is a Commonwealth of Learning wise woman, and she is a leader par excellence. Thank you. On behalf of the Commonwealth of Learning Wise Women Project, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Tune in for our next episode when we have another dynamic female leader from across the Commonwealth. I am Dr. Ann Wallace, signing off until the next time.